Let's see.
Rain hit large parts of the UK.
Towns and cities were flooded and one man died after being swept away by the water. Large hailstones, astonishing pictures we've seen, have also damaged property in some parts, and commuters were trapped in their cars for hours.
The northeast of England was one of the worst affected areas. Peter Harris is in Gateshead for us this morning, where the clean-up hasn't even begun there.
Not quite, no. These cars, in fact, last night were so far underwater they couldn't be seen, and this morning their owners have been returning to the inevitable news that they will be written off. And further afield, there are problems on the railways, the East Coast Main Line, no trains north from Newcastle to Edinburgh until tomorrow. There are dozens of schools across the Tyneside area closed this morning, and still without power. 7,300 homes without power this morning, down from 15,000 in fact overnight. So against this backdrop, the clear-up begins.
Across a huge sweep of northern Britain, people are dealing with the damage and disruption caused by the deluge. The northeast was one of the worst affected regions. Some 40 schools will remain closed there today, and more than 7,000 homes are still without power. For a while, much of Newcastle was cut off from the rest of the country yesterday, as drains were unable to cope with a sudden rush of water. Road journeys that should have taken minutes took hours. Public transport was hard hit too. Many people were caught out by the sheer force of the water. This man, Anik, Northland, thought he could manage, had to be rescued. In Leicestershire, it looked like monsoon season had begun. Elsewhere, hailstones the size of golf balls like these in the East Midlands damaged cars and shattered greenhouses. And in Newcastle, lightning dazzled drivers crossing the Tyne Bridge. There was a single fatality, a man swept away by floodwater near Ludlow. Others will be counting their blessings today, reliving lucky escapes and, like some in Northern Ireland, clearing up the mess. Richard Lister, BBC News.
Well, at the height of the problems here in the northeast, the Fire and Rescue Service in Northumbria dealt with 1,500 calls in around about 8 hours. There were homes that had to be evacuated in North Shields, and drivers heading out of Newcastle last night were taking hours to cover just a few miles. Now, one glimmer of better news this morning is that the metro trains, so important here, are back up and running, albeit with a severely disrupted service. But we're really just beginning the clear up here in the northeast of England. There'll be plenty more to do in the hours and indeed the days ahead.
Indeed, we can see the mud behind you. Peter, thank you very much indeed.
Terrible weather we saw yesterday. What was that all about?
Well, there were a couple of factors that led to those massive storms we had yesterday, Fiona. I'm going to show you why. Now, first of all, the air at lower levels was coming from the near continent. It was very warm. It was very humid. Temperatures were up to 28 degrees. The air much higher up in the atmosphere was coming from a different direction. It was very much colder, and that's a recipe for deep instability. It's a recipe for producing massive cloud very quickly, producing those damaging storms. That